Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. Let me know if there's any problems with the microphone. Oh, by the way, I ordered not one, but two Blue Yeti microphones off Amazon. And I will... I can't believe I'm doing this. Um, well, they're off on their timing. It was... yeah, but they'll be in soon, probably early next week, so I shouldn't have any more microphone problems, which will be nice, don't you think? So tonight, I titled the podcast "Tomorrow Never Comes," and it's an homage to living in the moment that you live. And I want to revisit last night as well, which was on spiritual self-defense. Because, believe it or not, well, I mean, if you've been listening regularly, the slightest little thing can kind of throw me off. You know, I don't know if you've noticed that or not, but let me just check my filters. Take out the noise gate. I don't need it. Okay. Yeah. I don't want to be all dramatic and say that, you know, I go into a semi-trance state to do this show or anything. But I have no problem saying that there is a kind of delicate relationship between the internal and the external, me speaking it out to you, that can be disrupted fairly easily. Oh, speaking of disruptions, one of the reasons I'm starting so late tonight, I guess it's not that late, I mean it's... Oh yeah, by the way, I'm Bruce McDonald, this is the Talamanca Review, it's Tuesday, October 29th. It is 22:33 in Costa Rica, which is Central Time. We learned that yesterday. And I experienced today a heavy rainfall, but no more heavy than I've ever seen before. And I experienced what I would consider to be what well, I don't consider it. It is absolutely the longest Starlink outage I've ever experienced. It's been about 2.5, 3 hours now. You know, has it been? Yeah, 2.5, 3 hours. So I'm just going to check the YouTube control panel to make sure that I'm. It says it's excellent, so I'm not gonna fight with that. That's fantastic. I've got really good uplink. Oh yeah, man. I don't know what it is, but this Toshiba Satellite Pro gets much better internet upflow than my Mac Mini. I am so tempted to buy the new Mac Mini with the M4 chip. They're starting it out with 16 gigabyte of RAM and the M4 chip. These M-class chips are just phenomenal. I'm just going to talk a bunch of nonsense for a spell, okay? Before I get into the sort of meat and potatoes of the show. Just stuff that's on my mind. Kind of limber myself up the way you stretch before you start working out at the gym. I was never a Mac guy. And then what happened was my really good friend Alan Park passed away November 10th, 2022. It's coming up on the 2-year anniversary. And I had helped him out significantly in his final days and weeks. And this Mac 2019 MacBook Pro he had was sent to me, and it was a nice box. I was really... What impresses me most about Mac are the peripherals. Their camera is better than most other cameras. It's in the shop now. Either the battery's gone or this is a common problem with Macs. But when I get it back, I'll podcast on it, and you'll know right away Bruce is on the Mac camera because it's so clear. Speakers are phenomenal. You know, it's just a beautiful machine. It's a 15.5 inch i7 chip, 32 gig RAM. The new operating systems are really good. They integrate everything really well, like your WhatsApp and all of these sorts of things. The new operating system, Sequoia, you can actually access your cell phone from the computer if they're on the same Wi-Fi network. It's really kind of cool. And this kind of got me really interested in Macs. And then when my son came last January, I bought a used Mac Mini, which is the little box. So you need an external keyboard, external mouse, external monitor, all of those things, external speakers. And but this was an M1 chip, so Mac made this huge leap to a new chipset they use now, and it's I don't think there's anything in the PC world competing with it right now. The M-class chips are phenomenal. They're super fast. And I got 16 gigabyte of RAM, and I was blown away. I mean, I can do video editing on this thing and everything. And really, really quite impressed with it. And ever since then, I've been kind of following this Mac world. And this is a huge thing for me, folks. I've been a Linux devotee. The box I'm on right now is a Linux box, okay? It's a new computer I bought it's a Toshiba Tecra Core i5 chip, which is a good chip, and 40 gig of RAM, which is a very odd number for RAM, but it's a powerful little box, only 14-inch screen, but I've got a 27-inch monitor hooked up to it here. And I run Linux on this, and Linux is what I'm used to for working. So I like to write a certain way. It's very superstitious, right? It's kind of like when you see a baseball batter walk up to the plate. You know, they do this little walk around that's very ritualistic, very superstitious. They tap their cleats with the bat, and that's what I'm like with writing, right? I have all these little ways I like to write. And this produces what's called a gestalt, which is it's a fusion between your inner state and your outer actions. And I like to write with a good compile I don't like to write in word processors like Microsoft Word. I write in an IDE, which is an independent development environment, the same way a coder would code. And so and I break all my lines at grammar points, whether they be a hyphen, a comma, a colon, a semicolon, what have you. I break everything at the grammar point and at the period too. So when you're looking at something I've written before it's been compiled, it looks really strange because the lines don't go to the margin the way they do in a word processor. But I've been writing so long that I've picked up all these weird little ways of operating that keep me at a kind of maximum efficiency. And I don't really edit at the word level now. I edit like when I'm looking at my typesetter, I kind of go down like this rather than across like this because I read the whole phrase. Remember, I break at whatever punctuation mark, I break at the punctuation mark. Okay? And then when I edit, I go more down than I do across. And I'm just looking at the phrases that make up my sentences. And that's how I do it. And then when I produce a finished document, I compile my text at the command line. So I use various command line tools and then I'll compile. This is how I write my books too, by the way. I do my books in a program that goes back to the 70s called LaTeX, LaTeX, and they're very good. It's very interesting because we're 52 years nearly 50 years on in the computer game, and nobody has improved on Donald Knuth's original typesetting system called LaTeX. And it was originally just available on Unix machines, and Linux is a home version of Unix. And Unix is what a lot of the back-end servers are and stuff for like big banks and stuff like that. You computer guys know what I'm talking about. I don't need to bore you, but a lot of people, they might not understand what I'm talking about, right? So I have to give a little bit of explanation. And so I do my books in LaTeX, and it's a beautiful typesetting system. By the way, once again, if you want a copy of The Galactic Historian, just send me an email. Those of you who have sent me emails and received the book and subsequently sent me, a little bit of money, 10 or 15 bucks on PayPal, you didn't have to do that. I offered the book as a gift, but given that you did, I receive your generosity in good and open heart, and I thank you. Every little bit counts. I got like 50 nieces and nephews. But I'm not a begging for my supper podcaster. I do this on top of working and everything, right? So the new Mac Mini, they've gone to 5x5. It's the smallest one they've ever made. It's a little bit thicker. It's unbelievably powerful, this new M4 chip. So I promise you, whatever computer you have at home now, even if you bought it just last year, I don't care what it is, a Lenovo ThinkPad with an i9 chip and 64 gig of RAM, I don't care what you have right now, this new Mac Mini with the M4 chip and 16 gig of RAM would blow it away. And it's very strange because, they've massively dropped their prices too. I don't know what's going on with Mac. And if you just go on YouTube and go Mac Mini M4, like a dozen reviews will come up. And it's like, in the computer world, it's the way the film critics world received Pulp Fiction in 1994. It's like it came out of nowhere and everybody's going, oh my God, you got to go see this movie, right? That's what the new Mac Mini M4 chip is doing. And people are calling it the best computer deal of maybe the last 10 or 15 years. And I think what Mac is trying to do is go out there and grab people the way I got grabbed, but they didn't get me through their marketing or through a sales promo. They got me through a friend passing away and me getting a MacBook Pro notebook and going, you know what? This is a pretty good notebook. Now, the notebook I got, had I bought it new in 2019, it would have been $2,000 US, right? And the new Mac Mini, although it's not a notebook, it doesn't have the keyboard, it doesn't have the screen, it doesn't have the built-in speakers. It's like 3 times the computer. And the base price for the base model for the M4 chip and 16 gig of RAM is $599 US. Like, it's unheard of. I would have expected this to be released at like $1,950 US or something. Okay? So I think I'm going to get one. And I got to get it past customs here though, where they'll double the price for me. And so I'll have my son bring it over I'll buy one in Canada and have my son bring it over. Well, that's a big 14 minutes and nothing at the beginning of the Telemanker review, unless you're into Macs or computers, and I do apologize for that, but I'm all limbered up now. I trust that my sound is good. I'll check my Skype texts to make sure that nobody... Hey, Bruce, you're crackling. Yeah. So, let me just check the chat here to make sure that nobody is saying, "Hey, Bruce, you sound like shit." And then I got the new Blue Yeti. Hi, Mikkel. Hi, Spencer. And then I've got the new 2 Blue Yeti microphones coming in. They're really solid micro. Oh, thanks, Mikkel. Yeah, it sounds good. Okay, spiritual defense. This is going to become more and more of an issue for people. in the coming years as we go through this. I got to come up with a name for this. Let's just say we're going around the dark side of the moon. And that's not literally what we're doing, obviously, but metaphorically I'll use that as my expression for the consciousness transition the human race is going through. Because everything's coming together now, and the reason you can see it all coming together is people we're starting to connect a lot of dots now, right? And stuff that we couldn't really put together in the past, and everything has helped. The spiritual teachings have helped. The holy books, philosophy has helped. Economic advancement has helped. So literacy has helped, and quite frankly, science has helped too. Okay, I mean, what they've done in physics, it's basically what the mystics have been saying since the beginning of time. Okay? And what's going to happen is more and more people are just going to have their realization moments. It's like a harvest. It's like a spiritual harvest now. But a lot of people, because what happens when more and more people raise their consciousness is it creates a kind of tow. You know, a tow, like a tugboat or a tow truck. It creates a kind of tow for the rest of the people in the human population as well. And so their consciousness is going to rise. Now, there's a lot of people, this is going to be sudden and uncomfortable. And there's a lot of people with very, very heavy karma on the planet now. I mean, this has always been a dastardly place. It's always been a place to get killed and robbed, planet Earth. Okay, but it's at epic proportions now. Okay, so what's going to happen when all these cartel sicarios get dragged into karmic recompense? What's going to happen when their negative protective deities are forced to surrender on the astral? Because this is going on the astral too. Okay? So they're going to lose their protection. And what is negative protection? It's a buffer, if you will, between your heart and what you do. Okay? And now, in psychiatric terms, we call this psychopathy or sociopathology. But those are scientific terms for things that aren't scientific. The truth is, people who can do horrible things without consequence are spiritually protected. So just as people are given guardians, guides, angels, ancestral family in between incarnations, whatever your perception of what your protection is, add this to your understanding. Negative people are given protection too. But really what they're being protected from is themselves. You see? Do you see? Okay? So the super negative people, and this is really weird. It's one of God's oxymorons, one of God's contradictions, okay? The super negative people, the best way to deal with them is spiritually, not personally, like your mother, your father, your wife, your children, but spiritually ramp up your love for them. Think of them as an individual unit of consciousness trapped in a negative pattern and say, look, I don't judge them, and I'm going to send them divine love. And that's actually the most effective thing you can do to fuck these people up. That is the martial art. Okay, so that's the kung fu of no striking. Self-defense is a very interesting thing because it has different applications in different circumstances. It's not just walking up and blocking somebody and then punching them in the nose and knocking them out or incapacitating them by watering their eyes. And rendering them semi-conscious or disoriented. You know, that's a playground fight. But in real combat, when you get up to the higher levels or even the astral, it's more about energy. And you have to know how to use energy, and your intent cannot be corrupted. Okay? So every once in a while, I have to go up against, maybe 3 or 4 times in my life, I've had to go up against what I and most neutral observers would consider to be a very powerful adversary that literally terrifies people. And I had one recently, a couple years ago. I'm not going to get back into it. I was savagely attacked with black magic. It came on as quick and sudden as food poisoning, and my son was attacked as well. This is real. Black magic is real. Most people never experience it because the people who experience it are generally the people who have already woken up and they've either inadvertently offended a practitioner of black magic or somehow gotten onto their radar. Okay? So I've had a few dandies. I've told you guys numerous times about refusing to convert to Islam after praying for a year with the Sufis. Now you may say, "Bro, Bruce, why didn't you convert if you enjoyed praying with them so much?" Their spiritual exercises were phenomenal. But when they asked me to convert, I said to them, no, it's not for me to convert to Islam. It's for you to leave Islam. They don't deserve you. Stop saying you're Muslims, you're not. And that pissed them off to no end. No end. There was more to it than that. There was a rather lengthy debate. By the way, the Muslim world is full of black magic as well. Even praying for the destruction of your enemies is black magic. And if you do that together with like in a prayer shoal like the Jews do, you can fuck people up. And they do. They do. Okay? A lot of those little... So you've got the synagogue where the whole Jewish community for a section of the city will congregate. And then you have splinter groups from that synagogue. Like they meet at the synagogue and then they'll have different prayer groups. And those prayer groups take place at people's homes. And at that level, it gets very personal. If one of the Jews will say, "Oh, this dumb guy won't pay his bills. He says I'm overcharging him. Let's teach him a lesson." And they will pray. They will pray against the guy's destruction, and something probably will happen to him, unless he's spiritually protected. The Muslims do it. I think that the Christians are the only group in the Abrahamic world that don't pray for the destruction of their enemies. Okay? You make of that whatever you will. Okay? So this self-defense is really a reading of the energy. And you're going to need some intuitive insight because there's no training for this. It's not like, karate where you just do these motions for 20 years. And when a situation arises, your reflexes take over and everything just sort of works. Spiritual self-defense is different. You have to be very calm, almost childlike. So it's you almost got to get that Kamala Harris giggle in the eye of the hurricane. Not my best metaphor. I apologize. But I think you know what I mean, right? You just got to go, "Oh man, this is happening," and there has to be a light-heartedness about you, because that's allowing the flow of love to continue. Okay? And then you think, well, how do I deal with this? How do I deal with this particular situation? By the way, the reason I'm talking about this it is the thing I get contacted directly most about from listeners to the Talamanca Review. And I've entered into dialogue with a number of people. Not more than 10, but a number of people, okay? And they're telling the truth. They're being savagely attacked. In some instances, the attacks are going on for months. And so I talk to them off air, and I'm also assuming that this is going on with the rest of you as well, okay? So, well, no, I don't think I can assume that this is going on with the rest of you as well. That's an incorrect assumption. But you may need this in the near future, okay? You may need this. So, you look at the situation and you decide what you're going to do, okay? Now, when you're under psychic attack, it can manifest in many, many ways, okay? So I've never given all the details about the 6-week warfare I went through with the Sufi Sheikh and whatever he was working with, okay? I never figured it out, what it was. Jinn, demons, whatever, okay? By the way, this took place in 2009, 15 years ago. And I'm not going to lie to you, it was a bit unnerving. I never got really, really scared, because I don't really get scared. The last time I was really, really scared was 21, middle of nowhere, in a tent, and to get to that tent, which was guarding a helicopter pad for a gold staking rush with a bunch of mining companies. I had driven 2 hours and then gone by boat another hour and then walked another hour. I was in the middle of nowhere. They asked me 3 times if I wanted a rifle. I was 21. I'd never shot a gun. I said, no, I don't need a rifle. And so my only job was to guard the helicopter pad and stay in the tent all night. Because this was one of the few places you could land a helicopter. Okay? And there's a lot more detail needed for this story, but I'm just going to skip over it. And a bear came in the middle of the night, circled the tent for about 30 minutes. Internally, I made peace with my own death. 21 years old, I said, I'm going to die. And I remember thinking, I'm not really afraid to die, but wow, what a way to go, being mauled by an animal, a 400-pound bear, right? And I just sat down in the center of the tent and I started doing mantra. I focused on my forehead and the bear just went away. But I went through the mental process of accepting my own death. And that is probably the most frightened I've ever been in my life. Terrified. I mean, who wouldn't be, right? It gets you on every level, like the physical animal level, like, oh my God, I should have taken that rifle. You know? And then the guys come the next day and there's bear tracks all around the tent and they go, you should have taken that rifle. I said, yeah, I know. And it was really funny for them, but it was terrifying for me, man. I got heavy rain coming in again, but it's been raining all day, which is why the Starlink went out. So the whole thing with the Sufis and everything unnerved me quite a bit. And I called a few friends for help, and they weren't able to help me. I was on my own. And so what was going on? It generally manifested when I went to go to bed. You know, and something was speaking directly into my head. Like, I mean, it was so pronounced, I thought, oh my God, this has got to be like an intelligence agency in Canada or something. This is that voice-to-skull technology I've heard so much about. It was trying to pull me out of my body, right? Like, pull me right out of my body. And I literally had to, like, ground myself with my breath not to have my spirit pulled out of the body. It was like almost like an alien abduction. They kept saying, Bruce, And it was as clear as somebody speaking 2 feet away from you, right into your ear in a normal speaking voice. Bruce. And I'm just like, turn the light on in the bedroom. There's nobody there. I go, what the fuck is this? Right? Like, what is going on here? Poking and prodding. When I would sleep on my stomach, something would be shoved into my anus. So there was sexual violence, which is very demonic, by the way. And all of this was put on me by a fucking so-called holy man. Okay? Right? So don't tell me that, behind the scenes of this war with Islam, there's a lot of this stuff going on as well. Right? So maybe that has something to do with all the people going crazy in North American society, is the prayer groups and all the focused intentional energy in the Islamic world. We have no protection for that. We've become a secular, non-spiritual, non-praying, non-meditating, unprotected society. And people don't talk about this when they talk about the collapse of the West. That we gave up our gods. I've spoken about it in different ways a few times on this podcast. In one instance, I spoke about we've given up our principalities, right? I alluded to some of the aspects that would give us protection in the series of podcasts. I can't remember how many I did, 2 or 3 on jurisdiction. There was another one, right? But you need to be protected. Okay? You can't live in this physical world without police, and if there's no police, without the respect of your neighbors, and without being armed. I personally am not armed where I live right now, but every male in my family is armed, all my brothers-in-law. And all I got to do, or my wife has to do, is scream out like this, and 5 guys will be over here with long arms. So that's protection, right? But you got to have spiritual protection too. And whatever has lulled us into believing we don't know that we don't need that has led us to this bear trap we're in now. No pun intended with the story from when I was 21 years old. It's led us to what we're in now, okay? So, yeah, Jerry Marzinsky, I like him a lot. I've interviewed him. I was one of the first people to interview him on a radio station I was working at. I think in like 2018 I interviewed Jerry Marzinsky. So poking, prodding, and it culminated with a direct attempt to take me over. Okay? So a direct attempt to take me over. Now, this was not the product of sin or anything like that, like the Catholic priests say. And this is another very important thing, okay? When you watch all of these Catholic and Christian YouTubes now about demonic possession, that's just a human being against the spiritual realm. The spiritual realm is only doing its job because, as we know, as the priests are beginning to admit now, a demon cannot possess you without the permission of God. But more dangerous than that, and more challenging than that, in the realm of self-defense, is defending yourself against incarnate human beings who have relationship with negative entities. Because the negative entities can act on the authority of the human being independent of the authority of God. I know, sounds weird when you hear it, but it's true. Okay? So this thing tried to take me over, and I was in this epic struggle, and then I had a spiritual figure come right into my consciousness and take care of it for me. So I was saved. And it was not Jesus. It was Milarepa, the 11th century, 1200s Tibetan mystic. And I had developed a spiritual connection with him by taking an entire summer, 3 months, to read his book aloud, verse by verse, with my son, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Okay? So I had... And the 100,000 songs of Milarepa are directly from his voice. Okay? He would recite the songs, and the villagers in the valley would write them down. Okay? So I formed a connection with him in the spirit world, and he came in. I didn't ask. I didn't say, "Hey, Milarepa, come and save me." But he came in, and he just took care of it, and in a very comical way. And after he showed up, they never showed up again, whatever these entities were. But a Sufi sheikh put these things on me. A Sufi sheikh. Okay? So I've had a number of engagements since then, but minor and trivial compared to that, and generally associated with helping other people. And meditation is a spiritual exercise that you do when you're in a state of spiritual balance. It is like, I think, the highest form of spiritual exercise. But for self-defense, prayer is extremely good, because even when you're kind of tensed up and everything, you can still internally recite with your internal voice. And so it's very, very, very powerful. There's a lot of people now that are completely owned by entities, and they're not all demons, by the way. This is another thing that the Catholics aren't getting right. I keep saying the Catholics because they're stepping out and doing all these videos. Even one of my favorite podcasters, Sean Ryan, the ex-Navy SEAL guy, he does the Sean Ryan podcast. He just had a Catholic priest on and did a 3-hour interview with him, and they were talking about many things, including demonic possession. And that's one thing, okay? But there's many, many things that can attack you spiritually. In many instances, it's a dead human being that hasn't moved on, that is protecting a territory, sentimental attachment. The most attacked person I've ever met in my life was John Edmonds, and the Greys are a nasty force to be dealing with as well. Very, very nasty force to be dealing with. Extremely nasty, actually. And he killed 19 of them. You got to cut their heads off. If you shoot them, they can phase out of the 3D into the 4D and then go and get their organic robot suits fixed, right? Which are chlorophyll based, not hemoglobin based, meaning they're closer to being plants than they are to being mammals. Very weird thing about the whole gray alien phenomenon. And then there's other things that are just, quite frankly, undocumented that bother and pester human beings quite a bit. Cliff Eye talks about a lot of them as well. You know, you've got the insectoids, you've got the arachnids, you've got the reptilians, and things like this. And I have felt all of these energies. I have felt the gray energy. I had the gray energy in my house in 2019. They came over here to take a look at me when I was writing the book, and they tried to get into my space, but they couldn't do it. So I'm fairly well protected, and it's just the energy level I keep by my persistent work, okay? And there's no end line. There's no retirement in spiritual work. Even when your body ends, if you haven't gone all the way back home to the ocean of love and mercy, you have to keep doing spiritual work even in the next dimension that you're in to get further and further and further, okay? So it never ends. You know, some people think, the priest on the Sean Ryan show was saying this. He said a lot of people, they get depossessed and they're given a list of instructions. They said you got to pray every day, you got to start going back to church, and they don't do it. And 6 months later, and when you get repossessed, like the second time, it's even stronger and even worse. Okay? So, very interesting. So to my friends who I speak to who are being attacked, keep up your spiritual work. The repetitive, heart-based stuff is the most effective for spiritual defense, okay? So recitation of sutra, recitation of prayer, recitation of mantra, working of beads, you know, whether it's the Buddhist prayer beads or even a Christian rosary. There's a reason these things are universal, by the way. There's a reason every religious culture in the world uses beads. You know, when you go to an emergency room, when I lived in Taiwan, when you go to an emergency room in Taiwan, everybody's on wooden beads, praying. Okay? All the Taoists, all the Buddhists, they're praying, they're on the beads, okay? And it's kind of a sad thing that people only remember God when their chips are down. It's kind of, and this is leading me into what I said yesterday, okay? So really all of the negative stuff is working within the divine order to bring you closer to God, okay? Closer to God. And, you know, the really nasty entities that are living in very nasty regions on the other side, who interact with human beings, you could almost look at them as being the spiritual equivalent of the hardened convicts in that Scared Straight TV series they did a number of decades ago, where they take juveniles who are just kind of sitting on the fence. You know, they've been arrested 3-4 times, their crimes are beginning to escalate, and it looks like they're going to go to the big house at some point. They take them in when they're 16, 17, and they sit them down with all these murderers and stuff, and these guys come in and they say, this is what life's like in prison. This is what's going to happen to you if you come here. Okay? And they get scared straight. And this is really what the demons are trying to do as well. Okay? They're trying to give you a warning. Okay? As I said, and I'll repeat myself, the most abandoned people are the people who have no spiritual experience, negative or positive. They are really, that would be my version of a condemned person. Okay? Anyway, so tomorrow never comes. You're always living in the moment. And if you know anybody who's going through spiritual difficulty, just stay in contact with them. You're not going to get infected. Their entities aren't going to attack you. There's, you know, it's not the way it works. It's very similar to like debt collection. You know, you know, if somebody has debts and they're depressed, well, you talk to them if you're a friend. It doesn't mean you have to give them your money or anything or loan them money. They have to get out of that on their own. They somehow got into it, but you can talk to them and stuff. And and people need that conversation. And just be light and be jovial, even though they're going through a dark time. Don't commiserate with their desperation. Okay, that's the only advice I can give you. All right, I think that's good for today. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.